Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be showing how I cut the skirt part and the peplum part for the off-shoulder dress. I folded the material for the front part and the back part into two using my biggest body measurement, which is the hip, and I'm working with a hip of 44 inches. 44 inches divided by 4 would give me 11, and I added extra 1.5 inches to it. And for the back part of the skirt, I've added 1.25 inches for the zipper allowance. Full length of the gown I'm cutting is 50 inches. So for me to get the skirt part, from 50 inches, I would subtract the length of the peplum, the longest peplum, and the length of the upper bodice from the 50 inches. The length of the longest peplum is 14 inches and the length of my upper bodice is 16 inches. When added together, give me 30 inches. 50 inches minus 30 inches will give me 20 inches. So the length of my skirt is 20 inches. I've added half an inch to both the upper part and the lower part of the skirt as joining allowance. My start line to 8 inches is my hip line, and I've gone ahead to draw out my hip line. On my start line, I will be imputing quarter of my waist measurement plus 1 inch for that. Quarter of my waist measurement is 8.5. 8.5 plus 1 inch would give me 9.5. So I'll go ahead and impute 9.5 on my waistline. Then on my hip line, I will be imputing quarter of my hip measurement. My hip measurement is 44 inches. 44 divided by 4 is 11 inches. I will impute the 11 inches on my hip line like so. Then using my ruler, I'll be connecting the 2 points together. Then on my hemline, the length of the skirt, I would be subtracting 1 inch from my hip measurement and imputing it on the hemline like so. I'll be putting 10 inches on the hemline. I have 11 inches on my hip, then on my hemline I have 10 inches. Then using my ruler, I'll connect the hemline to the hip line like so. I'm going ahead to curve it properly to avoid any sharp edges. So I've joined my waist to the hip and the hip to the hemline. At the back pattern, at the zipper allowance, I'll be making some alterations to make the both side more protruding and to remove excess fabric. From the hemline, I'll be coming up by 2 inches, and on the 2 inches line I've made, I will come in by half an inch. Then on the hip line, from the hip line, I'll come down as well by 2 inches. Then I'll be connecting the half inch I've made to the line I've made below the hip line like so. I'll also be joining this half inch down to the hemline like so, and then I'll be trimming that out, and this will make the butt area to be more prominent. I will be marking out my darts using half of my bust span measurement, that is my nipple to nipple measurement, which for this video I'm using 4.5, and I will be putting 4.5 at the waist and the hip line like so and joining them together. Then I will be measuring my dart. My dart for the front is 5 inches, or starting from the hip line I would come up by 3 inches, and that will be my dart for the front skirt. And I'll be taking half an inch on both sides of this line I've made, and then connecting it to the 5-inch point I've made on the bust span line, like so. Then for the back part, I'll be coming down by 1/2 inch more than what I have in front, or from the hip I'll be going up by 2.5 inches, and that would form my back dart. So 5 inches is the dart for the front skirt, and 5.5 inches is the dart for the back skirt. Then I will now add my seam allowance, my side seam allowance, which is 1.5 inches. Because I used 1.5 inches for the upper bodies, I'll be using 1.5 inches for the lower bodies as well. So I've marked out my allowance. Then I'll be joining them just like the way I joined the skirt. I have added 1/2 inch allowance to the lower part of the skirt to join it to the peplum, and 1/2 inch allowance to join it to the upper bodies. So I'll go ahead and check my measurements to see that everything is correct, that I've added my dart allowance, that I've added the proper seam allowance. Then I'll go ahead and cut out my skirt. Then I would split open my zipper allowance. Then on my back pattern, I'll be recreating my darts just as I explained in the front pattern. I'll mark out the bust span measurement, which is 4.5. I'll put that on the start line, on the waistline, as well as on the hip line. I'll put in my 4.5, then I'll connect the 2 points together using a ruler. Then from the hip line, I'll be coming up by 2.5 inches, just like I explained in the front part when I was drafting out the darts for the front, and then I'll connect them together like so, and that will be the darts for my back skirt. Then for my front skirt, I will be altering it a bit to make it sit properly on the stomach area when it's being worn. I will be coming down from the allowance. I'll be coming down at the center part of the skirt by 1 inch. I'll be coming down by 1 inch, and I'll be connecting this 1 inch back to the side seam of the front skirt like so. I will connect it back to the side of the skirt by the seam like so, and this will make it sit properly in front when the dress is being worn. Then I'll go ahead and trim it out. And that's it for the skirt pattern. I'll be using the lining for both the front and the back to cut out my main fabric. For my peplum, the longest peplum, for me to get the length I'll be using, I'll be subtracting the length of the upper bodies and the skirt part from 50 inches, which will give me 50 inches minus 36 inches, which is 14 inches, and I added 1.5 inches hemming allowance to this. Then for the circumference, or for the radius of the peplum, the 360 degrees peplum I'll be using, I'll be dividing the circumference of the body, that is where I'll be adding the peplum, by 6.28, and I'll be adding this peplum to the hem of the skirt, which is 40 inches. The circumference is 40 inches. 40 inches divided by 6.28 will give me 6.3969, and I approximated it to 4.2. So 15.5 inches plus 6.4 will give me 21.9, which I approximated to 22 inches. I've folded my fabric for the peplum. I'll be showing you how I folded it with this paper. First of all, I folded into two like so, and then I folded again. I folded into two, then I folded again. Then I'll be measuring, taking my measurement for the point that has all parts closed. That's how I folded my fabric for my peplum. So using my tape, from the point that has all parts folded, I'll be measuring out 6.4 inches, which is the radius for the 360 degrees peplum I'm cutting, and I'll measure it all around like so, as you're seeing me do. That's how I will measure it all around to get the radius. Then after doing this, starting from that point as well, I'll be measuring out 22 inches, which is the length we calculated before. That's the 14 inches, the 15.5 inches for our peplum, plus the 6.4 inches for the radius that will be cut off. So this is what I'm doing. Starting from this point, I would measure all around 22 inches till I get to the end of the fabric on the other side. So I will measure till I get to the end like so. So after marking them, I have to cut it out. But for me to cut out the radius, I won't be cutting exactly on the line I've made. I'll be coming up by half an inch, and I'll be cutting on this half an inch, and this half an inch will be the seam allowance for joining the peplum to the skirt part. So I'll be cutting on the new line that I've made like so. After cutting the radius, then I will go ahead and cut out the skirt. And that is it for the first peplum that we would be adding to the dress. For the second peplum, the only difference is that I'll be subtracting 5 inches from the length of the first peplum, and I'll cut it exactly how I cut the first peplum. And these are my peplums. I've cut the first and the second one, and I've used my lining piece for the upper bodice and the skirt part to cut out the main fabric for the upper part and the skirt part as well. And these are the pieces. I've cut out everything the same way I cut the lining. That's how I cut the main fabric. I did not add anything, I did not remove anything from it. I cut it exactly the same way. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. I will see you in the next part, the part 3 is the sewing and the joining of these together, as well as how I cut the cape and added it to the dress. See you in my next video.